Let me back all the way up. What are we talking about? Who can tell me what's the Arabic word? I think no one can tell me, but I hope someone can tell me. What's our subject? The last thing we talked about. Not innovations, that's not the subject. In terms of hadith terminology. I'll give you a minute. May Allah give 3 special blessings to the one who can answer my question. Ameen. In English or Arabic, even give me the English word. The question is, what is the topic we are on right now, such that we talked about how the Wahhabis, they made 2 hadiths go against each other. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. They said it means every innovation is misguidance. But there's another hadith. مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً حَسَنَةً. Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam, فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا. Then he has its reward. هكذا, that's the answer. Brother Rami gave it. Ta'arud. Ta'arud means conflict. Our topic is conflict. Conflict in the texts. We spoke at length about clarifying وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ, which apparently says every innovation is misguidance. By the other hadith, مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً حَسَنَةً فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا. Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam will have its reward. Now maybe someone didn't hear the lesson previous, but now we're not going to talk about all of those things, because we want to move on to repeat something that we mentioned last time, other than the innovation matter that we've spoken about many, many times. Since we were talking about ta'arud, and why were we talking about ta'arud, which is conflict? Why were we talking about that? We were talking about that because we're still talking about acceptability in hadiths. We said that a hadith has to fulfill conditions of acceptability, and also its meaning, besides those conditions we talked about, its meaning has to be an acceptable meaning. To say that its meaning has to be an acceptable meaning brings us to several examples, hadiths that are examples, and each of those hadiths opens up a subject. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Apparently it says every innovation is misguidance. This hadith is authentic. But he also said, مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً حَسَنَةً فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا. Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam, whoever paves a path, a good path in Islam. مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً. سَنَّ سُنَّةً فَعَلَ فِعْلًا. مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً حَسَنَةً فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا. Whoever starts a good sunnah, makes a good sunnah in Islam, he has its reward, and the reward of whoever practices it. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا وَأَجْرُ مَنْ عَمِلَ بِهَا. He has its reward and the reward of whoever practices it. So, either these 2 hadiths are contradicting each other, or something has to be explained properly. And for sure, they don't contradict each other. They're both confirmed, and we're able to explain them in compliance with each other. The scholars have a rule. Whenever it seems that 2 authentic texts conflict with each other, then they must be made to comply as much as possible. We put our effort to make them comply with each other. And these 2 hadiths can comply with each other. If we say that kul, which apparently means every or all, actually means akthar, most, in this hadith. Because it can mean that, if there's evidence. It can mean most, and we spoke about the proofs for that, which we won't repeat now. So, if it really means most innovations are misguidance, then it doesn't conflict with the hadith. Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam will have its reward. But if it only means and literally means every and all, then there will be a contradiction between two authentic hadiths, and that's impossible. Then one of them is not authentic. Consequently, there is no true conflict between the two hadiths. This is where we want to start from today, and this is where we ended last time, so we'll repeat it. A second example, an example of what seems to have conflict in it, but actually doesn't, cited by Ibn Hajar in An-Nukhbah, is in such hadiths as La adwa wa la tiyarah. There is no contagion and no bad omen. There's no contagion means there's no infection. Apparently the hadith is saying there's no such thing as communal infection or contagiousness. And there is no bad omen. It means there's no bad effect from superstition. Superstition is baseless. Like to say if the black cat crosses your path, then this is bad, or you can't walk under the ladder, or anything like that. If you split the pole, you have to go back, or the old Arabs used to say if the bird flies past him to the right, then he will be successful, and if it flies past him to the left, then he won't be successful. That's why it's called tuyara, because of how they were superstitious about the bird. So bad omen here means superstition. He said, La adwa wa la tiyara. There's no contagion and no bad omen. No bad omen, just for clarity for you. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you felt superstitious, then do not turn back. So if the black cat did cross your path, or you did split the pole, or you walked under the ladder, or whatever, don't go back. The Prophet said, La fala tarji'. Because this is nothing, so ignore it altogether. That's why. Don't feel like that. So a second example cited by Ibn Hajar in An-Nukhbah is in such hadiths as La adwa wa la tiyarah. There's no contagion and no bad omen. And La yu'di shay'un shay'a. Nothing infects another by contagion. As if the hadith is saying nothing is contagious. La yu'di shay'un shay'a. Nothing infects another thing. These two hadiths appear to negate contagion, outbreak. However, the Prophet ﷺ also said, flee from the one with judham like you flee from a lion. Why would you flee from him if he cannot make you sick? That's how some of them took it. Why is the Prophet ﷺ telling you to get away from this one like you would get away from a lion, so that you don't get sick like him? That's what they said. And إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ بِالطَّاعُونِ فِي أَرْضٍ فَلَا تَدْخُلُوهَا وَإِذَا وَقَعَ بِأَرْضٍ وَأَنْتُمْ بِهَا فَلَا تَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا. If you hear of a land with the plague, do not enter it, and if it befell a land while you are there, do not leave it. These seem to verify contagion. Both sets of hadith are confirmed, so they must be merged if possible, and the scholars had more than one way to do so. Some merged them by saying that the negation of contagion is not a denial that someone may catch a sickness from another. It is only a negation, a denial, that sickness is contagious without the creating of Allah. They say, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said there's no contagion, what he actually meant was there's nothing that contaminates by itself without the creating of Allah. And he wasn't denying that someone may get sick from another one, because the old Arabs used to believe that wrong belief. According to them, the Prophet ﷺ denied contagion with these expressions that seem that he's completely denying it. He's not restricting it. As if the Prophet ﷺ has flat out denied that there's contagion. So how do they explain that? According to them, the Prophet ﷺ denied contagion with these expressions out of opposing the pagan belief of the old Arabs that sickness is transferred by their natures, i.e. without the creating of Allah. It is as if he said, there is no contagion in the way that you Arabs believe there to be. According to this, the Prophet's confirmation of contagion in the other hadiths refers to the contagion being by the creation of Allah and not independent. This is just as Allah said, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You, O Muhammad, did not throw when you threw. Rather, Allah threw. That's if you just translate the words literally. In this verse, there is a negation that the Prophet ﷺ threw. And yet it's confirmation. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ. You did not throw when you threw. So his throwing is negated and it's confirmed in one expression. That's two sentences actually. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ. In this verse, there is negation that the Prophet ﷺ threw, yet it's confirmation. So the negation, i.e. saying you did not throw, is a denial that he acted without the creating of Allah. And the confirmation, i.e. saying when you threw, refers to his actual confirmed created act. What the Prophet ﷺ actually did as a created being, and that deed which he acquired with his own choice, that he was not forced to do. That aspect of the meaning is very important. It means what he did with his own will and choice. He didn't create it, basically. Therefore, this verse truly means you did not create the throwing when you did the act of throwing those pebbles, O Muhammad. Rather, Allah is the creator of your throwing. Likewise, the negation of contagion in some hadiths is only a denial that contagion occurs without Allah's creating. And the confirmation in other hadiths refers to the actual existence of contagion, however, as a creation of Allah. Therefore, there is no true conflict. That's clear? When I say that's clear, that also means you may ask a question if you want. Others merge them by saying that the Prophet's negation of contagion is a literal reality. So this is the other side. Those who said, no, actually there is no contagion, there is no infection, there is no outbreak. They said there is no contagion whatsoever. And the reason he said to flee from the person with Judham and not to enter or leave a town that has a plague is so that one does not take a wrong conviction by believing in contagion if you become sick while in the presence of those sick people. This is why the Prophet ﷺ silenced the man who questioned the Prophet's denial of contagion by saying to him, فَمَنْ أَعْدَى الْأَوَّلِ. Who then infected the first one? So let me repeat that. You understood the position of the first ones, those who said there is a contagion, but it's by the creation of Allah. That's how they merged these two groups of hadiths. Now here's the other side. Others merged them by saying that the Prophet's negation of contagion is a literal reality. There is no contagion whatsoever, And the reason he said to flee from the person with judham and not to enter or leave a town that has a plague is so that one does not take a wrong conviction by believing in contagion if he became sick while in the presence of those sick people. Meaning, if a person was in a town that had the plague and everybody was sick, and now that he's there, he got sick too, he might find it difficult in himself to deny contagion. So those who said there is no contagion, then they're asked, then why does the Prophet ﷺ say to flee from the person with judham and not to enter the town that has the plague or leave it? Their answer was, for the soundness of your aqidah. MashaAllah. So that you don't take a wrong belief. And they also added, this is why the Prophet ﷺ silenced the man who questioned the Prophet's denial of contagion by saying to him, فَمَنْ أَعْدَى الْأَوَّلِ, who then infected the first one? Thus, had the sickness been by contagion, the first one would have never gotten sick, because there was no one before him to infect him. Instead, Allah creates the sickness in the second one as He creates it in the first, i.e. without contagion. And this is Ibn Hajar's preference. This is his position, this saying. Therefore, there is still no true conflict between these hadiths. MashaAllah. That's a strong rebuttal. فَمَنْ أَعْدَى الْأَوَّلِ, who then infected the first one? So how did the first one get sick? If you say by contagion, then the question is, then who contaminated him? If they say it's by other than contagion, then it is said, then the others got sick like the first one got sick. It's valid that the others got sick like the first got sick. Just like the first one got sick without contagion, the others got sick like the first one got sick. Therefore, there is still no true conflict between these hadiths. So is there any question? Alhamdulillah. Branch. Clarification of some ambiguous texts. Before moving to discuss abrogation, because that is a type of conflict, let us discuss the correct explanation of a few ambiguous mutashabih hadiths. By ambiguous hadith, hadithun mutashabih, we mean those hadiths that, if taken by their apparent meanings, conflict not only with the decisive explicit muhkam texts, but also the judgment of the sound mind and the consensus of the nation.